So we want to talk about arena ministry. And I ain't telling nobody anything new, but let's pray. Lord, just help me. Help us. Lord, just overwhelm this place with your presence as we just dwell together and speak together and understand together. Lord, we just ask for your very presence here in this place. And it's on the authority of your Son, Jesus. In his very name that we pray. Amen. So here, let's start off. I want to answer two things about arena ministry. One, why arena ministry? And number two, how arena ministry. I'm going to suck at answering how. Because, man, you can do anything. But why arena ministry? So I just got to tell you that all churches are cultural. All churches, First Church, Main Church, Church of, United Church, Church In, Church About, all churches are cultural. Everybody goes to a church where they feel like, those are my people, right? So we go to Cowboy Church because we're just cultural like that, right? And so we are uniquely fitting to do arena ministry. And so all churches have they'll have a place, they'll have a fellowship hall, or they'll have a big gymnasium kind of a thing. But here's the thing that's so different that we need to grasp is that we are uniquely qualified to reach people who don't go to church. So people will come to our arenas they don't come for Jesus. They come for the reindeer games. They come for the fun. They come for the something else, but they drove through them gates. They knew they'd come onto church property. So they're coming to something. They're going to put up with some Jesus while they have some fun. And then, because the truth is, man, you don't save nobody. It's Jesus that does all that. All we're supposed to do is find a way to share that truth, right? All we're supposed to do is just find a way to relate that truth to this lost world that we live in. So why arena ministry? Because we're called to it. That's our people. That's our thing. When Jimmy was talking about the bullseye, it's so important that we never lose sight of our calling. First Church ministers to a different culture, and they'll never lose sight of their calling. They focus on that. That's what they do. That's how they'll stay. And amen. They reach people that Cowboy Church would never reach. So let's focus on ours. I got to tell you in a little short story that I was saved when I was a button. I was saved in a little basement of a Presbyterian church. That Sunday school teacher, she says, "You want what Jesus has?" I said, I do. Could I understand everything and all about that? No way. When my mom and daddy divorced, and I stayed with daddy, and pretty soon we wasn't going to church hardly at all, Christmas and Easter. Have you ever been a Creaster? I knew Jesus. I was saved. I had it. I didn't understand. I just figured me and Jesus was tight. I didn't need no buildings. I didn't need none of that to be at church. So you want to know what makes a difference in my life, my adult life? I've got children. I'm married. Cowboy Church starts a buck-out ministry. And at the time, I was catching broncs at a lot of rodeos. And so I had an opportunity to take I'm a pickup man. So I had an opportunity to take young horses to that buck-out, which I used to have to go to a college buck-out. Because you can't go to the rodeo where you're hired to do the work with a horse that you wonder if you will or won't. So I'd go to this buck-out. And I didn't go to the buck-out, not because I wasn't saved. I didn't go to the buck-out for any other reason than I wanted to get some young horses in that arena, and it was a little bird nest on the ground not an hour from my house. And so then for every Thursday night for the next 19 years, I drove over there. And I got my horses in the arena, and I fellowshiped with people who was doing the same sort of thing. People who didn't have no idea about it, kids that didn't know their backside from the top side. Bucking horses that would run off, bucking horses that would turn somersaults, just all the wildest stuff in the world. I went because I wanted to do something. And what Jesus did with me there changed my whole life and my family. And that ain't just my story. That's so many stories throughout. We all have stuff like that. Here's what I got to tell you is that arena ministry does that like nothing else in the world. Cowboy Church has the unique opportunity to do that stuff. Why arena ministry? Because you and I are called to it. People affect people. God could just anything he wants to do, but he uses me and you to do that stuff. Me and you build us a pen out there so we can do that. So we're going to have arena ministry. Cowboy Church that's what our foundation is. Now, what are we going to do with it? Here's what I want to get to, and hopefully I won't spend too much time before we get to talk about some ways. But in our arena, so a lot of times Cowboy churches will start Little Moose Fart, Texas somewhere, and they ain't got no money, they ain't got no space. They go use the municipal arena. And they're thinking, well, we'll go over here and we'll do this little event, Cowboy church thing, and we'll invite everybody over to our church service on Sunday. So they're not really pulling through a gate to come into a church property to do this event, but what they're doing is going to a church-sponsored event, whatever that is. So the effect is still the same. It still happens. Just because a church doesn't have a pen on their place doesn't mean that you can't have arena ministry. And on that note, what if you only have a 50 by 50 space inside of a panel? Well, you can have all kinds of stuff. You can set up panels on the grass or somewhere in the dirt somehow. You can still do arena type stuff, and you should, because as long as people are coming, they have a reason to get out of the house. They have a reason to bring their ponies or their dogs or their kids to come and do something. They're going to show up because our culture just embraces this whole family-oriented stuff. See, what we always talk about is, come on. We don't say, come on, be like us. We say, come on, be you. And we'll all enjoy this stuff together. We'll all have fun. So we do stuff like if you ain't got a pen on your place and you're not going to go to the municipal arena and you just set something up on the grass out there, why can't you have dog trials? Why can't you have a little fenced-in area where your kids all are riding stick horses doing these events? In a small space, ain't no bigger than these chairs right here. The kids will love it, and all the parents will be around there to do that stuff. Why can't you have sheep and goats and then sort them across the line on foot? Why can't you do all that stuff? Well, I'll tell you why you can't do that stuff, because you're lazy. So do it. Just have an idea and do it. So if you got to build your little pen on your place to have something like that would reach people, and the idea is that you invite everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a shoe clerk or you saddle a horse every single day and you go chase wild cattle. It doesn't matter what you do. People want to come together. And so we're just trying to create an environment for that. We're not saying you got to come here and we're gonna force Jesus on you or do a bunch of memorization of Bible verses or make it weird in any way. We're just saying, come on over here, have fun. But while you're here, while you showed up here, and so we're going to take a minute to let somebody who probably ain't the preacher of that church to share what Jesus did for me. So you could ask the preacher to do that. It's like, hey, preacher, we're going to have an arena event. You come out there and you give a word. But that's why people go to that church on Sunday. So when they show up at that event on a Friday or a Saturday or even a Sunday afternoon, I'm saying they would rather see you. They would probably rather see you stand out there and say, listen, I ain't no preacher. I don't know. The only verse I can remember is John 3:16 because I see it posted everywhere. But let me tell you what Jesus did for me. There was a time when, and then but Jesus. Pray, get back to the reindeer games, right? Somebody sitting out there thought, wow, that's just the way it was for me too. You see, God uses people to reach people. And standing out there in that arena, even though you think, oh, listen, don't ask me to do no devotions or anything like that on account of, that's a preacher's job. That's not true either. That's your job. So you set up a little pen, you have some little reindeer games for kids out there, or you go to the municipal arena and you have a full-on ranch rodeo out there. Or you have an event at your arena. here's the thing that happens. We'll talk about the events, but here's what we got to focus on is that we're not doing the event for the event. Don't get me wrong, we should do what we do well. We should be organized. We should be on time. We should do all that kind of stuff. But you know what the first thing that a church ought to do, a team ought to do when we're talking about doing an event at our space? We should pray about who's going to do the devotion. Who's going to do the praying? How are we going to do the ministry God's called us to? Because the event, that's the easy part. That's the part that 100 people could help you with. But we should pray about who's going to do the speaking parts. Can I tell you that saying, well, would you pray at the beginning of this event? That ain't enough. That's not doing ministry. How many times have you ever been a part of something and it's hot or it's cold or it's some uncomfortable and everybody's trying to hurry, so you sacrifice the ministry to get to the event so you can get this thing done? Because here's what we rationalize in our head. Well, let's hurry up and not make it too brutal on people. See, we're missing the boat. We have this pen to do just exactly that. We could cut down on the events. We could do something different as opposed to sacrifice the ministry of what we're called to do. How many times in our events do we think, you know what, we're going to have somebody, we got a 2-hour event we figure it's going to take to do all these little reindeer games. And we're going to have one devotion in there? I'm not saying that's terrible, because I know that's better than none. But why not have 2 or 3 or 4? Why does it got to take 20 minutes or 10 minutes to do a devotion? How come I can't walk in the arena and literally say, listen, I can't help this, but God said that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I just got to tell you, I thought it was over for me, not 2 weeks ago, but Jesus, right? And that affects people. This is the reason we have ministry, and that's the reason it can't just be your preacher, because people want to see me and you. They want to hear me and you. They want to know how Jesus did for me. Everybody figures that preachers got some Jesus they ain't got, so they're listening to him in a different way. But when you stand out in the arena, just you and me, people hear you different. Let's don't sacrifice our ministry for time. To have as many devotions and prayers as you want to. In fact, start off thinking you're going to do it twice. Add some, but don't subtract from that deal. Don't tell somebody, listen, you're going to have to take 5 minutes or 10 minutes to do your devotion, or you can only have 5 minutes or 10 minutes to do your devotion. It is true, some people, can I use the King James, sucketh at public speaking? And so we should be aware of those people getting out there and shipwrecking something, right? But find people who are willing to share themselves in their heart, practice that a little bit, and ask those people to do this for you. They don't even have to be on your arena team. They're just somebody at our church, or maybe somebody we know from another church who could come and share this truth of Jesus. The but Jesus part of our lives is what everybody wants to know. Can I tell you that it could be a man or a woman that does your devotion in the arena? We sometimes think because we want Cowboy Church to be masculine and the Bible calls men to be leaders. But how many young women and women are at our arena events? Ladies, you can speak to a woman like I can't. When you're talking about what Jesus did for you, it affects me, but it does affect our wives and our daughters. It does affect other women. So you can have men and women speak in your arena events, and you should. I don't have an issue with a woman praying at an arena, and I don't think anybody should. Is it wrong for a woman to lead people in prayer? Because let me tell you how I feel like about prayer. I'm praying in agreement with you, brother. And I'm praying in agreement with you, sister. And I'm praying in agreement with that preacher. And I'm praying in agreement with somebody who's praying out loud. My spirit joins with your spirit as we pray. We're speaking to God. So let's don't hang ourselves up that, oh, we need some men. We do need men to lead. And boys, God's called you to stand up and stand out. But ladies, He's called you to. Take advantage of the opportunity in our arenas to do that kind of stuff. It's so important and so strong and so powerful for that to happen. Can you have kids in the arena do that stuff? Yeah. And you probably should. As weird as they are and as difficult as they are to handle, they matter to somebody too. It makes a lot of difference for a young man or a young woman to talk about the but Jesus part of their life. And maybe they're very young in their faith and they're not very polished at this, or maybe they don't completely understand, but if you'll have them practice what they're going to say a little bit, like all of us should, be prepared to share that truth. We should use them. And I encourage you to do that. Be strong and do that and have expectation. And when you ask somebody that you want to maybe to serve in that arena ministry, to pray or give a devotion, it's not, Dave, would you do the devotion? It ought to be, Dave, would you pray about this? I'll get back with you next week. Because 100% Dave's going to go, nah. And it may still be, nah. But the truth is, if you'll let God work on somebody, and you'll give the chance for the Holy Spirit. That's how come you can't do this stuff like a week before the event. That's how come at the very beginning stages of the planning of the whole event, you're talking about the ministry. Because if you're going to do a barrel race, or you're going to do a dog trial, or you're going to do a buck out, we can read books about how to do that stuff. But the God part of our ministry has to come from personal experience. So we should just practice on that kind of stuff. Why arena ministry? Because that's what we're called to do. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We're called to do that. We're in Cowboy Church because we are called to do that. How do we do arena ministry? Let's just talk about that in a conversational way. Let's just talk about that in a way that maybe changes the way you think about arena ministry. So I'll just say, it is arena ministry that changed my direction in life. So I just can't tell you how important it is, not just in my life, but in everybody's life. All us cowboy types, we want to do the same thing. We want to be active, doing something. So let's just face the reality of arena. So what is it? Is it a buck out ministry? Why, if you got the resources, why wouldn't you? Maybe your pen don't have buck and shoots and all that kind of stuff, and different bucking stock takes different equipment. You got bucking horses, you got to have pickup men. If you're going to buck bulls, you got to have bullfighters. And it's important that you have qualified people doing those two skills. So catching broncs is easy. Monkeys can do it until it goes bad, right? It's just riding up beside that horse, and that cow kid or that cowboy trades horses, gets on the ground, you pull a flank, easy as it can be. But if it gets hung up, if it goes bad, if there's a terrible wreck, it means that you got to have qualified somebodies, right? It's super important. Bullfighting is easy. How many of us have ever been chased by a cow? We think, I could do that. Until that kid's hung up, right? Until he's hung up. And then he is in a bind. He can't help himself no more. And it's really going bad. And so it requires somebody who's qualified to hustle in there and do this. Actually, it requires two people, because good bullfighters, like good pickup men, depend on the other. So it is important that you find qualified people to do that. What if it's just calf riding? You could probably get away without bullfighters, right? Because if you got 10 men, you could mug almost anything. But bull riding, bronc riding, bareback riding, ranch bronc riding, that kind of stuff takes some equipment that's necessary, particular to those games, right? But what about barrel racing, calf roping, What about ranch rodeos? What about all that kind of stuff? Listen, there's a million different resources for you and I to get our hands on, figure out what the rules are and how that stuff goes, what the order of events are. You want to be very aware of the time. So if you open up you're going to have a barrel race and you just open it up to the world and you end up with 1 million barrel racers, which that really does happen. Like they just show up. And then you think, wow, what did we get? Now we're here for 2 days and we planned on being here for 2 hours. So there's nothing wrong with saying, listen, we're going to have a barrel race and we're only going to take 50 barrel racers. Right? Are you worried that your arena is not professional grade, so barrel racers won't show up? You know where Montague County Cowboy Church is called to? Montague County. That means all the people around here that got a horse out there in the pasture, they are the ones that want something to do. It's these families, it's these men and women, it's these children in this area that you're called to minister to. I come from Kaufman County Cowboy Church. And you know who we're called to? Kaufman, Texas. A couple other little one-horse towns around there. I got no grand ideas that some PRCA bronc riders or barrel racers or bull riders or team ropers are going to show up at our little old spot and do that. And if the barrel racers came and they said, your arena sucketh, I said, wow, that's too bad, because we're having fun. Because the arena event is about ministry. It's about ministry. So you want to have good equipment. You want to have good ground. You want to have that, and you want to drag after the barrels every 10. Nothing wears me out more than dragging, but the idea is that the idea is ministry. What if you just had people with a rake at every barrel, and after every barrel racer ran, somebody ran out there and knocked the holes in with some sand, pushed their rake and jumped back over to the fence, right? Set the barrel up, just took care of that deal. You didn't take the time to go drag a tractor around the arena and spend 5 minutes preparing the arena for Susie, who's 6 years old, riding her daddy's ex-rope horse. Let's just be honest about this thing. Quit trying to make these things into professional events where professional people come. Reach your community, reach the town, reach the place where you are called to, and allow that to be okay. Because our idea is, well, if it's not big and grand, boy, we didn't win. We didn't succeed. We didn't accomplish nothing. The truth is, if 6 people showed up, and 2 of them you never had seen before, God's doing something. And you're only called to do, sometimes you'll do an arena event and it's for you. It's for that team. It's for that group to come together and learn something. Sometimes you do an arena event and it really is going to reach people in your community. But all of it matters. All of it matters. When Greg was talking about small group, can I tell you that our teams and our churches are a form of small groups? Not the best ever, because we get focused on the business at hand a lot, and we'll kind of skip through some of the word and the discussion. But that's a form of a small group. So that team ought to get together and talk about stuff and consider stuff and reason together, and like each other, pray for each other, find out about each other, because we got to find judges. We got to find people who will rake the barrel pattern back down. We got to find people who are going to open the gate and let people in, people who will let people out, people who could chase. At our church, we'll set up panels so we could chase three big old stinking cows into the arena. And you think it's just easy, like open the gate and they'll go right out there, but they never do, right? And the people at our church who do that have grown, like that's become like a whole ministry in itself, cow chasers on foot. Because those people are super involved in that. They realize it's difficult. You know, the cattle don't do what you want them to do. Cattle will make you cuss. And they've learned that, and they're trying to minister and preach to each other and help each other through that. They've become a small group all of their own. And so we got cattle events, we got timed events, Do you know that you could have a kickball tournament in an arena? You know what is funner than that? Get you 3 swimming pools, them plastic swimming pools, fill them with water and bury them almost to the brim, and then have kickball, and those 3 pools are bases full of water. And you cannot imagine the fun that people have, grown-ups too, as foolish as that is, because they'll hurt themselves, they can't recover. But they'll show up. They'll be a part of it. And you know what is great? They'll be a part of their children's teams. They'll be a part of their grandchildren's teams. They'll be a part of the whole entire thing. And which brings me to another idea of what to do. There's a Cowboy church out there in East Texas that does a legacy ranch rodeo. So you got to have a little kid, and you got to have 2 little kids, and then there's 2 adults on that ranch rodeo team, and they're gonna tie a calf down, and they're gonna stretch one out. They're gonna do 3 ranch rodeo events. But the legacy thing is that those adults have to let those buttons rope first, and not a fake rope. Like, throw your rope down, just act like your rope, and we'll go catch them, and we'll be fast and win this thing. It's a legit. Encourage them kids to catch. The cattle fit the bill too. So those kids can really do something, and then those parents are encouraging them to do that. Or those uncles or those grandpas, they're encouraging them to do that. Or those moms, they are totally involved in all these things. So legacy ranch rodeos. But anyway, let's get back to non-horse events. So you can have kickball in your arena. Why wouldn't you? You could have volleyball in your arena. Why wouldn't you? You could have soccer. There's so many reindeer games you can play in the arena. And by the way, if you're going to do age groups in arena and you're going to have lead line people, shorten that sucker up. They'll say, oh, we're going to move the barrels in for the lead line. But they don't move them in nearly enough. Time doesn't matter. Make them 10 feet apart. All that does is encourage the people who are leading to stay in the game. Because after they got to trot around some big stupid pattern, they're talking about, you're sorry, kid. I can't do it for you, baby. Just bring them in. Time does it. You're still timing it. You're still doing all that stuff. Make it reasonable. Think reasonable. Don't get stuck on, well, we got to reset the barrels when we get to the next age group. The barrels aren't that heavy. Find more people to help you. Just make it reasonable. Do that, right? And the idea is when we're doing all of our games, make it simple, because you probably don't have the resources that you think you do. The help that's going to be there to help you. So when you get ready to go and you've planned out the event, you've got your ministry taken care of, now you got your event taken care of, and you got people who said they were going to be there that ain't there, can you still do it? Can you still do it? Or did you make it too complicated and you can't get something accomplished now? You can't start on time. You can't start when you said you would. And you don't have enough people to help you do the stuff that you said you were going to do because you made it big. Just take little steps. Accomplish something simple and be good at it. And then encourage everybody who helped you do that thing too. Make a big deal out of at the church Sunday morning when you talk about that thing. Take a minute to talk about, thank you guys for helping at that arena. It was a great ministry. I can't imagine, you'll never know the impact you made in our community because you were there. Can I tell you, you'll never know the impact you made in your community because you started on time, because you did a good job, you were prepared, you understood what you were going to do, ministry and event. It's so important that you work through all of that stuff before you pull the trigger on doing something. It takes, at very least, weeks. But really, it takes months to plan that kind of stuff. Arena ministry is a way bigger ministry than what we realize. We think monkeys can do that. Let's pull the trigger. Hey, we got a great idea about this thing out in the arena. Listen, be intentional about the team, talking, praying, thinking about the ministry, then about the event. Let me ask you, could I help you with any other questions or any other ideas or anything else that you've got going on in your brain? Because I do got to get out of here. We've got another speaker that's going to be here in a minute. So I just want to ask you, do you have any questions? Could I help you with anything? Chickens? Which, by the way, If you think a little chicken chasing thing in your arena ain't a good idea, hand a kid a chicken. You pick up a chicken. People think there ain't nothing. Rope them. People think, oh, there ain't nothing to that. You know how many people literally today have ever touched a chicken? People think like, it's a chicken. Oh, no. I'm not touching that thing, right? And you know what? What if you lose a chicken or he dies in the process of a reindeer game? It's sad, but it's a chicken. So if you get all them kids around, right, and you dump 5 chickens in there and you don't have musical chairs, you have musical chickens, you know what? If you ain't got a chicken, you're out. That's real. They'll get them. A lot of them are going to try to get them, but they don't really want to touch them. It is so much fun. You can't imagine until you start thinking outside of the bull riding box. You can't imagine until you start thinking outside of the barrel racing box. Your arena, the whole livestock, the whole idea is way bigger and way different than what we think. And it's up to you to start this process. Any other reindeer games you can think of? A cutting with stick horses and ducks? How outstanding is that? How outstanding, because ducks are weird anyway, right? And let me tell you, children are scared of loose birds. They really are. They want to be brave, like, because everybody says, just like on that mutton, but hey kid, you want to be a mutton buster? Yeah, until he's on the sheep, right? It's the same way with ducks and chickens. You got to, cutting on a stick horse is outstanding. Do you know if you'll put 8 panels together in like an 8, and you put 2 goats and a sheep in one, or 2 sheep and a goat in one, and then you'll sort them into the other pen one at a time, a sheep, goat, sheep, and you just have 2 kids, the kid that's in the middle where the panel's missing is probably going to freak out, because those sheep and those goats jump and they duck and they run right through, and it's not a very big space. You think, oh, nobody would want to do that, until you do it a couple times, and then everybody wants in on that thing. So many games that you can do if you'll just give it some serious thought. If you'll just give it some serious thought. Stick horses, you can use wagons, you can use water, you can use horses, you can use cattle, you can use sheep, you can use goats, you can use dogs. All of that, nothing is off the table. You just got to be bold enough to plan on it and take advantage of the opportunity of our arena to do serious ministry and reach our communities for Jesus. That's our calling. It's uniquely Cowboy Church calling. First Church doesn't do that. Main Church doesn't do that. United Church doesn't do that. They reach their culture. Let's focus on our culture. Stand and be strong. Anything else?